Lesson 20. Exercise 1. Listen and read. The Little Match Girl. It was getting dark, and it was very cold with the snow falling. In the street, there was a poor little girl, barefoot and bareheaded. She was shivering from the cold, and her coat was torn. In her old apron she had a lot of matches. She saw carriages passing by, with happy families and happy children wearing coats and hats. She tried to call people's attention. She climbed a box, offered her matches and asked for help. But nobody looked at her. Nobody bought any matches from her. Thus, fading from hunger and from the cold, she dragged herself painfully, overcome by tiredness. She looked like the living image of misery. Walking down the street, she could smell good food coming from the houses, and her empty tummy ached with hunger. She sat in a corner between the houses, but she felt colder and colder. She couldn't go home, as she hadn't sold any matches and she hadn't got a single penny. She would surely get beaten up by her father for not having sold anything. In their house, it was almost as cold as it was there, because they only had the roof for protection, and still the wind came in, despite the rags and straws they put in the huge cracks. She then decided to light a match to warm herself. When she saw the warm light, she imagined herself sitting in front of a large, clean stove with red pots on it and lots of delicious treats. How nice it was! How comfortable! But the tiny flame went out, the stove disappeared, and only a burnt match remained in her hand. She lighted a second match. When its light hit the wall in front of her, it became as transparent as a veil, and the little girl could see the room beyond. A tablecloth as white as snow was spread out on the table, and on it there were shiny plates and a steaming roast duck, stuffed with apples and dried plums. But the tiny flame went out, leaving only the rough, damp, cold wall in front of her. She lighted another match and found herself sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. It was the largest and most beautiful tree she had ever seen. Many candles burned in its green branches, and colorful ornaments surrounded it in a beautiful spiral towards the sky. The little girl stretched out her hand towards the Christmas tree, but the match went out. She looked up at the stars and remembered about her dear grandmother, the only one who had ever loved her, and who was now dead. She must be there now among the lights of heaven, she thought. She lighted another match against the wall, and in its light, her grandmother appeared clear and shining, yet mild and loving. "Grandmother," she cried, "take me with you. I know you will go away when the match burns out. You will vanish like the stove, the roast duck, and the Christmas tree." And she quickly lighted all the matches she had, because she wanted her dear grandmother to stay with her forever. And the matches glowed so brightly that they were brighter than the daylight. Her grandmother had never looked so big and so beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and they both flew upwards in brightness and joy, far above the earth, where there was neither cold, nor hunger, nor pain. In the morning, there lay the poor little girl, with pale cheeks and smiling mouth, leaning against the wall. She had been frozen to death on the last evening of the year. The child sat still, in the stiffness of death, with her little hands full of burnt matches. She tried to warm herself said the people around her. No one imagined the beautiful things she had seen, nor into what glory she had entered with her grandmother on New Year's Eve.